Michael Bloomberg just gave $1 billion to Johns Hopkins University to have free medical school. If you get into Hopkins, you get free medical school. And it joins the illustrious ranks of places like NYU and I think the Cleveland Clinic before that provide free medical school to anyone who gets in. How wonderful. Medical students were going so deep into debt. Now that they get free medical school, people were saying they're going to be more likely to go to primary care. They're going to be more likely to be a pediatrician. We might even churn out more doctors, somebody had the audacity to say. And everything is going to be great. This is the group of people that deserve a break, medical students. It's hard enough to be a student. Well, I have some thoughts on this issue. And I've been saying these thoughts for quite some time. Free medical school actually doesn't do anything good for anybody. Let's just analyze the problem. Okay, you've got a lot of rich donors. They got billions of dollars. The school wants the money. Okay, all these schools, Harvard and Hopkins, they want them to take the money. They need to sell them on a big idea to to persuade the donor that they should fund it and put their name on something. And what's better than the feel-good idea that your donation of $1 billion is going to make school free for all these students in perpetuity for years to come? That really sounds great. But here are the problems. Number one, you're taking money from a rich person and you're giving it to a poor. No, you're not giving it to a poor person. You're giving it to somebody who's actually going to be really, really rich. You see, the moment somebody's admitted into medical school, they have career lifetime earnings that are in the many millions of dollars. Even if they become a pediatrician, a family care doctor, an occupational medicine specialist, even the lowest paying fields, they accrue millions of dollars over their career. Even the lowest paid doctor is able to pay off those medical student loans. This would be like a tax incentive program that's giving money from billionaires to people who are millionaires, multimillionaires, rather than people who don't have anything. If you want to donate money to a school, make a community college free, make a trade school free, make a plumbing program free, make an electrician school free. That's somebody who can much more likely to benefit than somebody who's going to be a physician. You are giving people money who are already in the upper quartile of socioeconomics and upper quartile of income. It is a transfer of money from the rich to the rich. And it's a tax subsidized one because Bloomberg's not paying tax on $1 billion. And that's my problem, number one. Number two, it doesn't make more primary care doctors. I truly think that some of these people who say that have been dropped on their head. It's simple economic reasoning. If I give you a choice as a medical student, you got a 30-year career ahead of you. Do you want to go into a specialty like family medicine or pediatrics where you make $200,000 a year, or do you want to go into a specialty like neurosurgery or dermatology or ortho where you make $700,000 a year? And your answer is over 30 years. That's a huge, big difference. And you're going to say, well, on balance, ortho, derm, urology, opto. And that's why the specialties that are coveted are the specialties that are coveted. They make more dollar per hour than the ones that people don't want to go to. That's the incentive. The incentive to choose the lucrative specialty is more money over the lifetime than the specialties like primary care, which are forgotten. Now you give the same person $200,000 in cash and then ask them, now which one do you want to choose? The one with 10 million career lifetime earnings, or do you still want the $4 million career lifetime earnings? That $200,000 doesn't change the future incentive. The future incentive is still so much greater for the lucrative specialties. And in fact, empirical data supports that as NYU had their free med school, they're not in fact pushing people into primary care. They got all the same gunners going for ortho that ever did. If you actually wanted to incentivize primary care, you'd say free tuition if and only if you become a primary care doctor. That would be an incentive. Free tuition if and only if you stick with primary care, move to a rural area. You could even say, I'm going to use my money to lobby to change the DRG codes, the billing codes in Medicare, so that primary care actually gets paid as much as some of these more lucrative specialties. That's a fix. That changes the incentive structure. I'm 100% sure that if infectious disease doctors made the same as dermatologists, they would be equally competitive. They're sort of cognitively equal fields. They both have some things interesting and some things boring in them. And they would be equal if they were paid equally. But of course, derm makes so much and ID makes so little that nobody wants to do ID and everyone wants to do derm. Also ID, they made a lot of pandemic recommendations with no evidence, so they got problems. But to be fair, derm makes a lot of recommendations with no evidence, so they got problems too. All right, so free medical school. What's really going on here? Why does Johns Hopkins and NYU want the free medical school? Well, there's a little ranking called the U.S. News and World Report ranking, and that ranking puts you higher if you can recruit college students with higher GPAs and higher MCAT scores. How can you recruit higher GPAs and higher MCAT scores so you can boost your ranking? If you get free medical school, you're going to be able to pick people and draft them, and you're going to steal people from Harvard and Stanford that you otherwise wouldn't. If I were admitted to Harvard, Stanford, or Johns Hopkins Medical School, there's no way in hell I would go to Johns Hopkins Medical School. If you have free tuition, I might be slightly more likely to go there. But to be honest with you, you should still go to Harvard or Stanford, in my opinion. I mean, you should just take the loans and go there. But that's what they're doing. They're just trying to draft the best students so that they can move up in the rankings. The rankings that they say they don't care about, but they care a lot about. Okay, they're lying. They do care a lot about those rankings. They're like, U.S. News and World Report rankings. These don't matter. They're not a measure of how good. Oh, number 2? We're number 2. That's how they do it. That's how these people do it. They're shameless. I feel bad for these rich people donating the money because, like, that one woman who donated to NYU, she struck me as a very old, sweet woman. And I feel like, I don't know, if you go to an old woman's house and you sell her solar panels that have a 30-year lease and she's never going to pay off, you might say you're a crooked swindler and you swindled this old woman selling her solar panels. And if you go to a rich old woman and you make them donate to your free medical school, are you really that different? I don't know. I'm not sure that you're that different. I'm not sure. So, my thoughts. Free medical school, the biggest scam there ever was. I made a joke online that it would be better for a billionaire to just literally flush the money down the toilet, because that might actually curb inflation a little bit. But it was just a joke. It was just a joke. I don't think that's better. It's so simple if you have $1 billion. I mean, the charities, I'm going to write a piece on this on my Substack, Vinay Prasad's Observations and Thoughts. You should subscribe. What should you donate to? I mean, honestly, if I had $1 billion and I was going to donate it all, well, first I would buy a yacht like Mark Zuckerberg, obviously. No, just kidding. I'm not interested in that. Okay, if I was donating the whole money, the first thing I would do is, if the goal is pure altruism, to do the most good for the most people, I think you got to do something that Peter Singer suggests. You're donating it to a charity that's providing food and basic nutrition for people in poverty, whether that's poverty in the U.S. or poverty globally. That's where you're directing the money. That's where your gift will give the most value if it's a well-managed charity that's been doing that for a long time. And I think Peter Singer has a number of such suggestions. He's the Australian and Princeton philosopher. He's had a lot of recommendations. If you do decide you want to donate to a university, you need to donate it to specific individuals doing work that's otherwise not well funded. I would never donate it to somebody sequencing the genome. You know how much money there is to sequence genomes? Every fucking person in the world is giving money to sequence genomes. UK funding genome sequencing, NIH, China, everyone's funding genome sequencing. Your money is not making a difference. You're just throwing money in a big pile of money. Okay? So all these universities are bamboozling donors to fund stuff that's being funded through other mechanisms. Fund what's no one's funding. Fund the doctors who actually spoke up against the bad pandemic policies, the doctors who actually do research that's critical of the pharmaceutical industry, the status quo. Fund the people who nobody else wants to fund because the entrenched interests don't want to fund those people. That's what I would do with my $1 billion. Have a scholarship program for people who are really in poverty, who are just trying to be the first in their family to go to community college, not somebody who's going to be a doctor, even if they don't come from family money. Unfortunately or fortunately, the mere fact they've gotten into medical school means they're already set for life, really. They just have to not blow it. And honestly, it doesn't take much not to blow it because we literally don't fire anyone, even the most incompetent person from medical school. The chance that anyone will blow it is very, very low. They literally just have to show up. Actually, they don't even have to show up anymore. They barely have to show up. Like if you showed up like a 25% of the time, and if you just basically just don't swear at anybody and smile occasionally and show up occasionally, you will graduate and make millions of dollars, okay? So it's that part, a lot of problems there, okay? But donating money to these kids is not the solution. And I know they're going to be hurt. Like if I was a medical student and somebody donated all that money for me, I'd be happy. But there's a difference between your personal gratification and the wisdom to see that this is a foolish policy. All right, I'll be back with more videos. I got a lot of things I wanted to talk about. Until next time.